Hey everybody, welcome to another hobby break video. Today we're going to talk about basing miniatures. If you watched any of my previous videos, you know I was kind of trying to figure out a way to base a ton of miniatures quickly and have it look relatively decent. So it's mostly not in terms of how to build a super fancy base and for like display or trying to win a competition or anything. But this is one way that I've used. Well, I'll show two ways, but one way more in depth, and I've based hundreds of miniatures at this point, so I think it works pretty well. I will have some links to a couple of other really good tutorial videos kind of covering the gamut. I'll talk a little bit more about one of them in a minute when I talk about the Agrellan Earth, but they're going to be kind of all over the place, so very sort of time intensive. I wouldn't say really time intensive, but really time intensive, really display oriented, and another couple of quick videos about how they did basing, and the ways that they explain it can be done very quickly as well, in addition to what I'm going to show you here. So check the video description for links to those if you're interested. So let's just jump in, and then I'll show you what I've kind of done and a couple other things. Okay, so I've got kind of like two sets of material here. I've got this Liquitex resin sand, and then a type of paint and some wash, and then I've got these two folk art paints with some Agrellan Earth here. Now what I've been doing over the last probably about 2 months now is been using a lot of this Liquitex sand. So let's take a look at what it is. Now the only place I've been able to find this is on Amazon. Now this will cost you, I think it cost me just over 20 bucks, but if we crack this open here, you can see I've used a fair bit. Now it wasn't much fuller than this because it's not like full to the brim when you get it, but I still have a good chunk of it left here. And like I said, I've done hundreds of miniatures with this. So this $20–25 that you're going to spend if you do get this is going to go a long way. And so what you do is I mix this with this steel gray. Now this one's almost empty, and this will cost you about $1.50 or $2 depending on where you get it. I got this at Michael's. I do think Michael's sometimes carries this. They have other stuff like this, and so if you're feeling a little wily, you can maybe pick up a couple other of these Liquitex products. They do some cool texturing stuff. I used to paint not so long ago, and you can do some really funky stuff like mixing this with different paints. So what I do is I mix this together. I don't use a lot of the steel gray, kind of mix it together, and then I'm just going to go ahead and lay on sort of like a chunk or two of this and just kind of mush it around. So we'll take our gene stealer here, and you can see this works pretty well sort of blended with this decayed industrial type of thing. So I'll push this around and then just leave it, and now it's very hard, and you'd have to really dig at it to sort of flake it off. So there's no glue involved. A lot of times you'll get some of these different rocks and stuff from GW or other folks that you get on there, you lay layers of PVA glue and all that. This you just mush in with the steel gray, mix it up, and just start putting it around. You can kind of chunk it up a little bit more. Let's find a little spot here on this guy here. So if you see this there, so it's just a little bit more chunked up there and maybe a little flatter. Some of the guys I don't use as much, like this little marine here. I decided, let's break it up, just have a little bit there, kind of smooth around. It does leave a rough texture on the ground, so it is kind of spread over because it does dry clear, but of course I mixed it with the steel gray there. So you can really get crazy. You can build up big mounds of it. It will dry very hard. Now once it dries, then I just wash it with some Nuln oil, and that's it. You're going to go through more Nuln oil than anything. I think these cost about $5 a bottle or so. I get these at the local game store. This you will drive through a lot of. Probably in basing all the miniatures, I think I probably went through 2 or 3 pots of this, which isn't too bad, but I'm talking in the hundreds here. So you do that, and it'll get in the cracks and crevices there, so it does a little bit of shading. You can see kind of like the tops of them are a little bit lighter, and then there's a little bit darker edges around those. I haven't gone in and dry brushed these. You could go in and dry brush these with a lighter gray or a white or something, but I kind of figured let the natural light hit that and not really call too much attention to the base. One thing you could do is once you do that, I just paint all these black on the edges, but you could do like an army color. I tried this and didn't really like it. It's like I had purple around all the Gene Stealer guys, and then you could do red around all of these corn bloodbounds. But it kind of draws the eye away from the mini, which nobody wants to do that. So anyway, but that's kind of a quick base. And so it's real easy. You can do this like after you've put the miniature on as well. Because I'm one that wants to get in there, build the miniatures, prime them, paint them, you know, do all that while they're on the base. It's just easier to pick them up, put them down. You don't have to worry about mounting them some cork or something like that and worrying about that. You can get them done quickly. And then after the fact, you just kind of shove this stuff around. If you get any on the miniature, you just take it off because it's pretty much clear except with a little bit of gray. But while it's still wet like that, you just wipe it off and it's gone. You don't have to worry about it. So that's one way that I've done. And the reason I chose this is because if you look now, it's going to work in a lot of different settings. So these are more fantasy, you know, maybe more older school medievals type of miniatures as well. It works for them. These are more space age, science fiction types of guys. This can work for them. I think it works okay on different types of mats. So like if I went through here and did a bunch of forest, well, it's not going to look that realistic or whatever on a snow background. And if I went through and put snow on a bunch of these, why do I have snow guys that are fighting in the desert or something? So this is sort of generic dirt or mud or steel or, you know, maybe dirty snow or something like that. So you can, this is a little bit more generic, and so it's not all black. Which is also fine, but you know, it gives you a reason to kind of base it like this. So I'll throw some on some snow now. So it doesn't look terrible on the snow, and the idea is that I like to be able to play in different environments and have it look somewhat cohesive to, you know, where the figure is actually represented there. So that's one approach I took, and like I said, there'll be links to some other stuff, some other approaches people have taken, and you can certainly, you know, make the bases more you know, specific. But I was trying very hard not to be specific in this case. Now this fella here is from the Shadows of Brimstone, is Bilal. It's sort of like he's the hardest or the second hardest guy. I don't think the hardest guy is out yet. Sort of like the end boss of the whole game. And I went and put him on sort of a somewhat lava-ish type of base there. So you can see it's got these cracks and stuff, little reds and yellows peeking through. And then I went ahead and painted his edge of the base a strange color. I don't know why I picked that color. I might change it. I just thought the color looked nice. I was kind of more painting this to have it look nice. But I think I may do maybe all of my Brimstone characters in this color, because a lot of times you spend time in the mine or some crazy, weirdly otherworldly land, even though there is like an Antarctica type of terrain and all that stuff. But I feel like the word brimstone and fire and this sort of demonic presence in brimstone maybe would lend me just to paint these. And I kind of just like how it looks. And so the way that you do this, and I will have a specific link to this video by Warhammer TV, who does awesome videos. You guys got to watch them. This is Agrellan Earth. This is a Citadel or a GW technical paint here. And it's got kind of a goopy texture there. And we'll just take a peek in there. So it's real, that's not very good, but it's real goopy. And you can kind of see it there. And so you're also going to goop this on. Now what I did here is there's several tutorials online as well about how to do this. And one thing I just want to do a quick divert. You can play with these too. I mean, like you can mix this, I don't know, with red and see how that looks, and then do a wash. I grabbed a pack of the bases, of these GW bases, and I laid down different textures and colors and things like that to kind of come at a conclusion. So I would recommend that too. If you're really like, I don't really like how Joel's look, but you know, I get where he's going, but I want to try a different look, grab some of these and then throw them on just a base without a figure, and you can have some fun with it. So this one here, you can just goop on like so, and the thicker you goop it, the more crackly it's going to be. So in this space here, obviously the Agrellan Earth is sort of thin, but here it was thick. It was sort of stacked on top of the base a little bit higher, and then it just kind of naturally cracks. Now this will take a little bit longer to dry than the Liquitex resin sand. This one you can leave it dry. You're probably good at an hour depending on how much you put up there, but give it a good 2 hours or so. Unless you really stacked a ton, then you got to give it maybe overnight. This is definitely an overnight dry. Now what I did here was I laid down very stark splotches of yellow. So here there's like a big old splotch of yellow, and next to it maybe a big old splotch of red. And I use these very bright primary colors here. But I don't want them to come through too much. And so you just kind of laid it down, no mixing or anything, just kind of and put it around and let that dry. That doesn't take too long. And then you put the Agrellan Earth on top of it and just kind of vary it, you know, fat spots and little thin spots and so on. And then it'll crack, and then whatever's underneath will come through. And then again, I give it a quick wash of the Nuln oil to kind of seep into the cracks and darken it up a little bit like that. So I like how this looks. I like the idea of lava and the sort of ground being unstable for this fella at least. And so that's also another kind of a quick one that you could do. You know, I don't know how realistic that is to, you know, base an army like that, but maybe if you were doing an army of orcs who were sort of from like a blasted waste, then, you know, that would make sense, even if they are riding on a plains. So I just want to quickly kind of talk about some of the basing techniques that I've been playing with, and definitely, again, take a look at some of the links in the description. There'll be like a toxic basing, which will work, I think, for these gene stealer guys. And then there's another Agrellan Earth one, which is a very simple tutorial on those. And then one of the tutorials is a very cool, relatively quick way to make a really high quality display level, you know, base, you know, really elaborate, but very, very quick and cheap. And so that one just came out. It was like, oh, this is fortuitous. I'll link to that in the description there from Bitbox. So yeah, so I'm pretty happy with these. And if you have any like other comments, or like, hey, you should try this other product from Liquitex or somebody else, then you know, it's something that's relatively quick, because again, this one is super quick. Mix a little bit of gray, smush it around, just kind of get it spread out even. Don't worry about too much how it looks, because it's more organic. You know, if you don't care, it's just going to be kind of natural. And then you let it dry and then wash it, and it's done. And you can do, you know, in an hour or two, you can do dozens of miniatures if you want, depending on how much, you know, time you want to spend, you know, getting all the different textures and stuff in there. Okay, thanks.